Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for May 30th through June 5th, 2022. Happy Memorial Day for those that are in the United States. I know that it's a long weekend for some of you, but I know that we are also all around the world. So if you are watching live, please say hello. Today is a Gemini new moon, so we got a lot to talk about, especially as we're coming out of eclipse season. I'm sorry I got a little bit of a late start today. I guess I'm just kind of on the slow train today. But we're coming off of a Gemini new moon. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about Saturn. And if you watch me over the however many times we've been doing this, you know how much I love Saturn, because Saturn is really present in the astrology of this week. And when Saturn is present in the astrology, we have to do Saturnian things. We have to make the right choices. We have to sort of mark the hour, mark the time of our lives. We have to be an adult and do the mature thing, to take on responsibility and duties. And sort of my joke, but kind of not a joke, is that just do whatever Saturn wants. Life's a lot easier. We're going to talk about Saturn. We just had what's called Mars conjunct Jupiter. I think it was yesterday, Sunday, May 29th, and how this brand new cycle. But this Mars conjunct Saturn really activated the energies of Chiron, and Chiron's a newer addition to astrology, but man, don't you all feel it? It doesn't have that enthusiasm that you'd expect from Mars and Jupiter. It sort of hits on the deeper pain points. But we've got a lot going on this week. I already alluded to the Gemini new moon, but we also have two planets changing directions. We have Mercury changing directions. It's turning direct in Taurus on June 3rd, sorry. And then Saturn, as I was speaking about earlier, turns retrograde on June 4th. So anytime we have what's called a station, that's the technical term in astrology, a planet will either station direct, forward movement, or station retrograde, which it means appears to go backwards. Just your friendly astronomical reminder, the planets don't actually move backwards in the sky. It's just an optical illusion. But for the symbolic purposes of astrology, which astrology is a symbolic language, it appears as if a planet goes back in the sky. It appears as if we are rewinding, reflecting, going back in. And something that you've heard me talk about over time is that most planets turn retrograde. Except for the sun and moon, all planets turn retrograde. And you will have a retrograde planet from anywhere of 3 to 4 weeks, which is the duration of a typical Mercury retrograde, or 5 months, which is a typical duration of a planet like Pluto, Uranus, or Neptune. So it's quite common that the planets, some planets are retrograde, which means that we are always doing our inner work. It's just a part of the duality of life, which is really at the core, actually, not just Gemini season, but at the core of this week's Gemini new moon, the duality of life. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman. I'm an astrologer and psychic medium here in the New York City area, and every week we gather live to look at the astrology, but I know a lot of you watch the recording, you watch it on the replay, you watch it on YouTube, on Instagram, and even on Spotify. You can watch the video now on Spotify. I do this work under Empowering Astrology, and just, kind of from time to time, like to explain, why Empowering Astrology. It's not about painting over things. It's not about putting on rose-colored glasses, but it's about trying to use the sometimes difficult astrology for the biggest impact, for the biggest transformation, for the highest good, but also to understand that every planet, every sign has a dual expression. It has a light and it has a shadow. here we are in Gemini season, and we are looking at the duality of likeness. Hear me say that again and again and again. And how a sign, even a sign that, maybe culturally we think is great, it has two sides. But Gemini, I think, Gemini is an underrated sign because it does teach us about free will. It teaches us about choice and how life, we have to sort of, is it a left or a right, or up or a down, a yes or a no? And there is an enthusiasm, a curiosity to Gemini, a need to take on new experiences, try new things. But in the wheel of astrology, we need the discernment of Virgo in order to know which choice is right. We need the wisdom of Sagittarius. And these three signs, these are 3/4 of what's called the mutable cross, tactical point. And these three signs help us to take true deeper wisdom and knowledge of what our choices nourish in our lives, in our world, in our soul. And that's the duality of Pisces. That's the mutable cross, by the way. So yeah, let's look at the astrology of May 30th through June 5th of 2022. When I was preparing for the astrology of 2022, initially who's they? I was looking at ephemeris. The great astrology god said that this new moon was a solar eclipse, partial solar eclipse, and I think that information actually came from NASA. There was a page for a partial solar eclipse on May 30th of 2022 that was later deleted. So I guess at some point the great science gods decided that this wasn't a solar eclipse. But I wanted to mention that because this new moon is the first new moon in Gemini that's not part of an eclipse pair since 2020. Because in 2020, we started to have eclipses in Sagittarius and Gemini. We had the North Node in Gemini, but since January of 2022, the North Node, which is all of our collective north, our true north in the sky, but also what makes eclipses happen, that North Node has gone over to Taurus. So that's why Taurus season was all about eclipses. We had the Taurus new moon solar eclipse of April 30th just a month ago. And then we had the Scorpio full moon lunar eclipse on May 16th. So we're out of eclipse season, but this is something that I wrote about last week in my work, Empowering Astrology, empoweringastrology.com, that these eclipses, they're not just these singular moments in time. They're actually something that we keep returning to, whether a planet goes into Taurus, like Venus did just a few days ago, or we have a full moon in a sign that crosses or opposes or squares an eclipse degree. So it's something that we're going to keep going back to. These eclipses of April and May, they are sort of these electric points, these portals in the sky where our time bends, our lives bend, and things can come in and out. And just this past weekend, the moon returned to Taurus, where it hadn't been since the solar eclipse. So what happened, this is for you all to think about, what happened this weekend? What were the conversations that you were having? What's the deeper stuff that you're working through? What sort of came in and out of your life? Because this past weekend had the moon in Taurus, which means it's the first time that the moon was in Taurus since the solar eclipse, which means that we got that sort of hit of eclipse energy. And sometimes eclipses can take a month or so to sort of reveal themselves to us. But that said, today's a Gemini new moon. Today, May 30th, 2022, we have Gemini new moon. It was at 7:30 a.m. Eastern time, was at 4:30 a.m. Pacific time. And this new moon was at 9 degrees of Gemini. So new moons are new beginnings. It means that we are in a new lunar month. It means our lives are sort of existing through this lens of Gemini. Again, I was talking about how Gemini is the sign of duality, free will, choice, but it's also the sign of communication, ideas, information, learning, and even travel. So on a base level, the next 4 weeks are really lived through this energy, this archetypical energy. I need to explore, I need to learn, I need to exchange ideas and information, I need to get new perspectives, I need to make new choices. And that's sort of, like I said, this base experience that we're all having over the next 4 weeks. But Gemini is a very particular part of your chart, depending on what sign you are. So we'll talk about that when I go through the 4 signs. What area of your chart is Gemini, and what is it trying to open up for you, and what sort of this new perspective is trying to give you. But here's the other thing about this new moon, and I wrote about this in my new moon report on my website. You can even get it in the show notes. This new moon picks up on the energies of Mercury, which is presently getting ready to turn direct. It's still retrograde. It's over in Taurus. So we're seeing Mercury through the lens of value, stability, security, trust, possession, ownership, sensuality, pleasure, fertility. But we're seeing Mercury doing a couple of important things. It's turning direct on very close to the lunar eclipse degree of November 19th of 2021, and very close to the lunar eclipse degree of May 16th of 2022. So there's this pivot that's happening this week that may or may not be part of a larger story that's part of this eclipse, these eclipses that we're having throughout the end of 2021, 2022, and the beginning to the end of 2023. The other thing is that Mercury, although not exact, is sort of holding in this square to Saturn. So if Mercury is voice and communication, ideas and informations of Taurus, where Mercury is presently is a sign of value, material security, sort of the intrinsic value that we put on things, trust again, but then Mercury squares Saturn. So Saturn is this really interesting planet that I always come back to, because I think you get a lot of mileage out of Saturn. Each and every one of you has Saturn somewhere in your astrology, meaning at the moment that you're born, Saturn occupied a sign and what's called a house in astrology, and it may or may not be making certain aspects. The way I see it is that Saturn represents the contract of your life. Now that's some big picture astrology. I could do like a whole webinar on just Saturn. In fact, I did a few years ago. But whenever we meet the energies of Saturn, we have to step up. We can't try to cut corners. We can't rush. We can't do the thing that's actually not the right thing. Saturn is a reality check. It's sometimes sobriety, literal, figurative sobriety. This need to look at things through a very sharp lens and to understand things from a very different perspective. Saturn is always threading back to that initial contract, air quotes, meaning that thing that we are trying to do and grow and evolve throughout our life. So then we have a big check-in with Saturn this week. Saturn turns retrograde on June 4th, turns retrograde at 25 degrees. So this week we're sort of having to look at our choices, look at the words that we use, the decisions that we make, the directions that we're going through the lens of Saturn. Does it last? Is it the right choice? Is it an illusion? Saturn will cut through illusion quite quickly. Is it a choice that supports the future, builds towards the future? Is it a mature choice? Saturn, I think in its core, even though it has a little bit of a reputation in astrology, is why I love Saturn, Saturn is just trying to get us to be better versions of ourselves. So sort of the big question for you all this week is, how do you become better versions of yourself this week, while looking at the choices that you make, Gemini, and sort of where is that coming from? Based on what value? Is that based on your own value, your cultural value, your familial value, your self-worth? And how do you make different choices? Choices that support you, that are built for the future, that line up, that are in integrity, and that really, anchor you and something. Let's think about Saturn. Saturn's about commitment. It's about the commitments we make to one another, the commitments that we make in relationship, the commitments that we make for life, and even the commitments that we make to build the life that we live. So it's kind of a heavier energy than typically Gemini new moon, Gemini season is known for. I have a Gemini moon, but I was also born with Mercury square Saturn. So it's something that I know on a daily basis. And I think that there's the shadow. Remember I was talking about the duality of Saturn. There's the shadow side of Saturn, which is like, it's not good enough. You are trying to achieve some level of perfection that's mythical. The self-criticism, the sense of like not using your voice. It's sort of the shadow side of Mercury and Saturn. And certainly when I was a kid, like I barely spoke. But here, ironically, however many decades later, I do speak. I speak for a living, but that's something that I had to grow into. So I think on some level, we have to look at the things that we are growing into right now and how things take time. Think about Saturn. It's not a quick planet. It takes 29 and a half years to go around the sun. So keep that in mind this week. Really live up to the higher bar that Saturn is setting up for us. There's, of course, positive perfection, the need to perfect ourselves, to make ourselves better. There's negative perfection. It's never good enough. It's never perfect enough. See, it's not perfect. So these are the things that we're sort of looking at, and we also need to be very conscientious and have a self-awareness about how we're using our voice this week, how we're using our voice in general. And a lot of times the voice that we use is somebody else's voice. It's not really ours, whether it's cultural programming or what we were told to do growing up, or how we change our voice to fit somebody else's needs or expectations. Something to think about. So Mercury square Saturn. Mercury turns direct at 26 degrees. Taurus, I was saying earlier that's an eclipse degree. And then Mercury also will station something called trine Pluto. Now trines are this energy that everybody gets excited about in astrology, but I want to sort of say that trines are an energy that talks about potential and opportunity, but we need to incarnate it. We need to make it manifest. We need to bring in the energies of the material. That's sort of the balance between sort of the squares and the trines. In astrology. I'm throwing a lot of technical information today. So there's something about needing to really open our eyes this week, see deeper, get to the bottom of mystery, really do our research and our discernment. And Mercury trine Pluto is also the power of what we have to say. And Pluto talks about the transformation and the evolution of how we use our voice, how we make our choices, and even the impact that our voice or our choices can make. So this is a lot of astrology going on, and then we get to June 4th, Saturn turns retrograde at 25 degrees of Aquarius. So first, do keep in mind that Saturn is starting to wrap up its time in Aquarius. By this time next year, Saturn will be in Pisces. So Saturn goes into Pisces on, I think it's March 4th of 2023. This is the last what's called station retrograde that Saturn is going to make in Aquarius for 30 years. Yeah, 30 years. But it's doing so in that square to Mercury. It's doing so in a very wide, what's called square to Uranus. It's picking up on energies of recent eclipses and possibly even not upcoming eclipses, but I think it's recent eclipses. And so there's this heavier, not heavier bad, but just sort of sobering, real energy going on this week. But here's where I love Saturn. Saturn is one of those planets, especially as I look ahead to the astrology of the year, even when I work with clients and I sort of look at the big picture of what people are dealing with in their own personal astrology. Saturn's always one of my go-to planets. Saturn is going to talk about the larger narrative arc, meaning where's the focus? What time are you in? Is it about family? Is it about career? But Saturn is also the moments in our lives where something forms. So this week could be very formative for people. Saturn in astrology is teeth and bones. And so this week we're sort of that energy for something to sort of solidify, calcify, and become real and become manifest. I mean, retrograde's not a bad thing. Retrograde just means that we are pulling in and reflecting and recalibrating instead of pushing out and taking active. It's a yin as opposed to a yang energetic state. So this week it's formative. It's we have to make serious decisions. Things may be recalibrating. We may be pivoting. We may be seeing the energy of eclipses in this week, or sort of the days or around this time, especially if we're a fixed sign. You've been hearing me talk about the fixed signs of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. A lot of stuff are going on in those signs right now. This might be one of those weeks when you look back to the astrology and you're like, oh yeah, there's a lot going on around the beginning of June of 2022. But yeah, like I said, when I look ahead to the astrology of the year, I look at Saturn, and Saturn really talks about those formative times where things come together, or things need to recalibrate, or things need to only end because they're either not in our highest good, or it doesn't have the sustainability to go to the future. And then in those rare occasions when we have sort of transgressed, when we have not lived inside of healthy limits and boundaries, Saturn will show us where we are out of order. Thus is the nature of life. I mean, while we are here in physical bodies, we are under the laws of Saturn: time, karma, and aging. So that's my periodic love note to Saturn. I'm a human being too, but Saturn is really how I learned to appreciate astrology, and maybe in the long run, how I learned to appreciate Mars square Saturn in my own personal astrology, Mercury square Saturn, Saturn square Neptune, and Saturn conjunct my North Node. Yeah, a lot of Saturn in my chart. So here I am, trying to give you all some Saturn love. But that's like the big points in the astrology of this week. We start this new moon, this new lunar month, but one that may be one of the kind of bigger pivots this year. So let's look at the astrology for the 12 signs. Just a reminder, if you know your rising sign, of course you can listen to your rising sign. I say listen for both, because you're going to typically see something reflected in both the signs. And if you're savvy enough, you can sort of synthesize both those two signs and sort of see how they're overlapping and informing one another. If you don't know your rising sign is the constellation of the zodiac that's rising at the moment that you're born. You do need your exact birth time, or pretty close, and that's how you get that specificity in your astrology, and you really do need that exact birth time. And I realize that some people don't have it. It can be reverse engineered. It's called rectification. That's some big deal astrology. I do like armchair rectification. It's not really, I wasn't trained. But anyway, let's look at the 12 signs. So let's start with Aries. Aries, so this Gemini new moon is in something called your third sign. Third sign talks about voice, communication, ideas, information. And so the next 4 weeks on some level are going to be busy. With your planet Mars in Aries, and you've got, I think, a couple other planets in Aries right now, Jupiter, it's not only a time of fresh starts and new beginnings, but really the power and the motivation to move forward. It just may take a few days to see Mercury turn retrograde. Mercury turn direct in Taurus on June 3rd. So you may be really ready to go, and in fact, maybe since Mars went into Aries last week, you're really feeling the fire and the passion and the push to start something new. I think because Mercury is retrograde right now, really give yourself a chance to plan, to see things from different perspectives, do the legwork, to do due diligence at this time before you just start working and doing things impulsively. But that said, Aries, over the next 3 weeks, it's about education, taking classes, gaining new perspective, learning things, getting curious about life. On the other hand, you may have a lot of places to go and a lot of places to travel, places in the neighborhood, trips, road trips. But this is the time of trying to explore things in your life. But you're just coming off of this, what's called Mars conjunct Jupiter. It's a grand new cycle in your life, Aries, and you're ready to set sail. Taurus. So Taurus, as you hear me say week in and week out, you are a fixed sign, and the fixed signs are not so fixed at the moment. You had that solar eclipse back on April 30th. You're in this sort of 6-month chapter of new beginnings. I sort of say that because even though today's new moon is sort of taking the emphasis or the focus off of Taurus, it's still going to be, we're going to keep going back to Taurus over the next 6 months. So there's something about this new moon that's really getting at the core of something about who you are, which is sort of the need to gather. You know, Taurus, you're the sign that needs to gather stuff, resources, money, material things. That's just part of the nature of your sign. So you may be feeling like this big push to gather and to sort of get the things that you need in order to feel safe and secure. And I think on some level, you know, you've been through a lot, Taurus. It's been a time of a lot of sometimes really intense transformations. And maybe this is a new moon that really gets to a very simple question, like, what do you need? What do you need, Taurus, in order to really be able to navigate a lot of the ups and downs that have been happening in your astrology, certainly over the past 4 weeks, but even over the past year, 2 years, 3 years. Venus is in your sign, so it's a time of new beginnings. And I would really wait to see what's happening once Mercury turns direct on June 3rd. But I think you're really going to want to look at that Saturn retrograde on June 4th. Saturn is turning retrograde in what's called your career sign. So this could be a time when something about your professional life is pivoting. You're having to make a serious decision about your professional life, get a new job, say yes to a new job, get a promotion, take a step up, or recalibrate something that's not working. And on some level, this time is not just about career, it's about your future, and it's about the direction your life is taking. So it's a little bit of a serious time for you, Taurus, this week. I think it kind of puts a lot of things in perspective and maybe makes you, I'm saying make, because Uranus is in your sign right now, and we have to sort of do what Uranus wants. We can't try sidestep it. So Uranus is trying to make you make some big changes in your life. So I think maybe Saturn turning retrograde can maybe give you perspective, help you to make some serious choices, decisions, hopefully make the right decisions, and start to build towards a very different future. Gemini, happy birthday, Gemini. If your birthday is on the 30th of May, plus or minus a couple of days, you're entering a new personal year that's about new beginnings, new chapters, renewal. But it is a year that is going to be through this lens of Mercury square Saturn. So needing to grow up, make the right decisions, make the right choices, build for the future, put things back into order and back into balance, and really honor your time, honor your commitments, and even honor the physicality of your life. Mercury, your planet, turns direct on June 3rd. So you're getting ready to come out of this more inward phase. I think it's going to take until the middle of June when Mercury gets out of Taurus and back into Gemini, where you start to really feel that new beginning. But this new moon sort of really puts this thing I was talking about in the intro about like serious decisions and really weighing the options in your life. But this is the first new moon in Gemini that's not an eclipse. And so you're coming out of this sort of larger chapter of your life. When Saturn turns retrograde on June 4th, it's going to do so in something called your ninth sign. Even Mercury turning direct on June 3rd turns direct in your 12th sign. A lot of soul searching happening right now, Gemini. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? What's your truth? What's your faith? Faith, of course, means a lot of different things, and maybe the more, maybe the serious decisions that you're making are either leaps of faith or based on something where you have to really stand up for your truth or stand up for what you believe in, or it's a product of a lot of deep inner work and searching to come to an answer that only you can come to. Taurus, not Taurus, wrong. Cancer, sorry about that, Cancer. Cancer, so you are coming to the end of your personal year. So you, of course, the sun's going to go into Cancer around the 21st of June, and that's your new personal cycle. It's Cancer season. But Gemini is your time to pull inward. It's your time to recuperate, to regenerate, to reflect on the past year, and to prepare yourself for the next coming year. So a new moon in Gemini says that the next 4 weeks are spent inward. And maybe you're like, oh, but that happens every year. But yes, to spend inward, to go on retreat, to get quiet, to think about the past year while anticipating the new year, to plant your seeds, to think about, to get maybe in touch with your intuition. The 12th sign of anybody's astrology, it's a very spiritual place. It's the intermediary point between this world and the next world. So Cancer, maybe you need to really listen to your intuition more, meditate, go for a walk. It's one of the examples I give Cancer when I talk about being able to listen to ourselves and be open up to these sort of flashes of insight from our higher awareness, is the times that we drive a car. And maybe this, I live in New York, I don't have a car, but the times you do drive a car, you're on that highway and you sort of fade out. And even though you're operating a car and speeding down the highway, you're not in that mental mind. You're something else. So I'm using that as a very typical example at a time when ideas and information could come in. So it doesn't have to be you're meditating for the next 4 weeks. Maybe just go for a drive, maybe go for a walk, do the dishes, take a shower. Those times when you're able to get out of your mental mind and to get into your intuitive mind, Cancer. Because it's in that place, not in the mind, but in the heart and in something above the mind, that you're able to hear yourself, hear your true self, hear the answers that you are looking for example. And maybe after everything that you've been through lately, Cancer, certainly, Saturn turning retrograde in your 8th sign this week is one of those deeply formative points, not just in your astrology this year, but maybe even in the astrology of this sort of 30-year arc of time that you're in. Well, sometimes we have to be tested by life. Sometimes we have to have the courage and bravery to look at ourselves, and sometimes even to look at ourselves unflinchingly. But do the deep work this week, Cancer. I know it's a really heavy time that you've been in with Saturn in the 8th, but hopefully as you're starting to get to the last stretch of Saturn in your 8th, maybe you're discovering some deeper truth or some deeper wisdom that's going to really carry you over the years. But I think that this, again, a lot of soul searching this week. Mercury is in Taurus. It's turning direct. It's about friends and community and your social circle and the people you can rely on. And maybe you need to have a friend as a sounding board, or really sort out all the things that you've learned over the past few years through your community. Or maybe you need to build community or get new perspective from other people in your life. But like I said, don't push too hard right now, Cancer. Really see how things are unfolding after after your birthday. Leo, so we've got a couple of big things to talk about. I mean, number one really is Saturn. Of course, Saturn is turning retrograde on June 4th, which is later this week. But Saturn is turning retrograde in your relationship sign. So if you think back to 2020, you entered this chapter where it's about other people. Now, relationship is one of the 4 pillars of life. Astrology teaches us that we can't do life alone. Whether it's serious relationship, committed partnership, marriage, or feeling that sense that we have a really strong one-on-one connection with people. So this is, of course, going to be different for every Leo that's listening, or even Leo rising listening. But Saturn, being Saturn, is taking a look at the progress you've been making on building connection over the past year, over the past 2 years. Whether it's romantic connection, marriage, committed partnership, whether it's just those very strong one-on-one connections in your life, Saturn wants to see progress. That's just the way Saturn works. So this is a week for you to really take relationships seriously, for you to demonstrate that you have a more mature perspective, a more mature energy with how you connect and interact with people on a one-on-one basis. For some of you, Saturn may be asking you to commit, to say yes, or even to say no. Because Saturn's one of those planets where we have to have a really healthy relationship with yes and a really healthy relationship with no. And for some of you, maybe this is a week where you're setting boundaries. Something's not working, somebody has been overstepping boundaries, a relationship is out of balance. It has to be put back into balance. So this might be a big pivotal turning point. It's really playing off of some larger changes that you're in, Leo. We've been talking over the past however many months. Uranus is in your career sign. So this is a time where it's about relationships, but it's also about the direction your life is taking, the role that you play in the world, and even your career. And for some of you, you've had some big career shifts over the past few years. That said, this Gemini new moon is in something called your 11th sign. And the 11th sign, there's 12 in total, by the way. The 11th sign is where we sort of reached the end of our, not life, it's just sort of like, the 11th is about civilization, it's about humanity, it's about society. It's like this really big area of the chart where it's very easy to get lost in, but it's a part where we really we're reminded of what we're part of something larger than ourselves. So this, on a very pragmatic level, might be a new moon where you have to make new connection, new friends, new community. But it's also a new moon that's trying to point you out towards the future. What do you want, Leo? What are you trying to create? Where are you trying to head? Are you able to see the bigger picture? And with that in mind, what sort of serious decisions that you're making, especially as Mercury turns turns direct in a square to Saturn. Virgo. So Virgo, your planet is Mercury, and it's coming out of Mercury retrograde. So no big deal. This happens every 3 to 4 weeks. It's 3 to 4 months. I'm retrograde. And this has been your sort of time when you've needed to go within, reflect, discern, and see things from a different perspective. Mercury is turning direct in Taurus, and Taurus is something called your 9th sign. So it's about, what do you stand for? What do you believe? What's your truth? What's your faith? And what's your conviction? And maybe how you see things right now, or even how you see things next week, may be different than how you've seen things previously. And maybe you need to get very mature, or even see things very differently. And maybe this is a time where Saturn is really pressing on you, like, what is right, what is wrong, like, what is your, that sense of justice, and how do things balance, and what sort of was the value of your convictions. But that said, it might be a little bit of a heavy week, Virgo, especially as you go into next week, because you're doing this little tangle with Saturn. And, like I said in my intro, just do whatever Saturn wants. Life's a lot easier. So show Saturn that you can handle responsibility, that you have a healthy relationship with time and commitment, that you know what to say yes to, what to say no to, and that you have a strong sense of right and wrong. And there's a sense of morality. I know that word's a little heavy, but that's a word that connects us to the energy of the ninth sign, where we have that inner sense of what is right and what is wrong, and we're able to live our lives accordingly, of course, in a good way, not imposing our sense of right and wrong on others. But that might be something that's coming up for you this week. Like, what is your conviction? What is your truth? But Virgo, this is a time for you to really kind of, again, make some serious choices. And with a new moon in your what's called your 10th sign, this is a 4-week period that's about career. It's about your place in the world, the title after your name, your ambitions, your responsibilities and duties. But maybe you're getting a new job, maybe you're looking to make a job change, or just sort of be in the spotlight with a lot of the work that you're doing, Virgo. Libra. So Venus has moved into Taurus. Venus is your planet, and if I'm doing my math correctly, Taurus is your 8th sign. So you're in this 3-ish, 4-week period of time when you're having to do a lot of inner work and inner reflection, and maybe even feel like life is testing you a little bit. But that said, Gemini is what's called your 9th sign. So this is a new moon for you to look at education, higher education, education that really sets you up in your career, as opposed to just like taking classes. But this is also a new moon that's about truth and faith and conviction and what you stand for. And maybe even a new moon that's about travel and long distance or foreign travel. You may be planning a big trip at this time, but I think that with Mercury in the 8th, this is a new moon where whatever truth that you are coming to has to be born out of a lot of deep work and maybe even some uncomfortable yet powerful realizations. This has been a time in general, Libra, about really facing yourself and really looking at the inner saboteur, so that you can take yourself and take your talent seriously. You do have Saturn turning retrograde on June 4th. Saturn is turning retrograde in your 5th sign. And so this has been a 2-year period, 3 years in total, about you, again, really taking yourself and taking your talent seriously. So Saturn's really pressing you on that this week. And it's a time when you can't undercut yourself, undervalue yourself, or even work against yourself. So really prioritize creativity, self-expression, joy, fun, even children, if that's something that's relevant to you, Libra. Scorpio, you're one of my fixed signs, and as you know, the fixed signs are not so fixed at the moment, meaning the things that we really take for granted, we think that they're always not going to change, because why would they? We need them to stay the same. But over the past couple of years, the things that you thought would never change have changed. Maybe they're still changing. So here's a couple of important things to mention. Number one, last week, Mars, your planet Scorpio, went into the 6th. So this is a time for you to focus on work, projects, duties, responsibilities, getting your day-to-day life in order, showing up, but maybe even working a little bit too hard. Really focus, of course, on your health and wellness. And with Jupiter really inspiring you, maybe you're making some bigger, positive, lasting changes. But Scorpio, Saturn, as you may or may not remember, has been down in your 4th since 2020. It's been about home and family, and sometimes the milestones that come with home and family, whether it's a move, a major move, buying a home, getting a home, or even feeling that need for a place to call home, because in general, this is a time for you, Scorpio, to really start to answer a question: where is home and who is home? And it may take until next year for you to fully see what those two questions, or what this larger framework of time is really trying to bring you towards. It is a time for Scorpio to settle down. I don't care if you're 80 years old. Saturn's in your fourth, and it's saying it's time for you to come into your roots, to settle down, to feel like you have a place to call your own, that your emotional needs are being taken care of. But by extension, family may need a lot of attention right now, whether it's a parent, whether it's your own family, your own household. But this might be a very formative week for you that's perhaps even touching on deeper emotional themes. But that said, Gemini is what's called your eighth sign. You are the eighth sign, Scorpio, and Gemini is your eighth sign. Hopefully that's not too much gymnastics for you, but it sort of reminds us that Scorpio is not that dissimilar from Gemini. And it's a sign that needs to really have the responsibility and the wisdom to be able to weigh the options and weigh the choices of life accordingly. And to have Gemini as your eighth sign, it means that on a deep down level, you know that life is about choice. And sometimes it's really dark choices, and sometimes really powerful, amazing choices that support something greater. And so you're having to weigh those two sides inside of you, Scorpio. And I think the most powerful thing a Scorpio can do is to be able to find that balance point within and understand that life is light and dark, but to have the wisdom and knowledge to know how they are using their Scorpio powers. Is it to destroy, or is it to support, to transform, transmute, construct, to be creative? But it is a new moon that does hit on deeper emotional points. And with Mercury turning direct in your relationship sign, really listen to the conversations, or pay attention to the conversations that you're having with other people in your life, including romantic partners. Maybe getting, really revealing something deeper, having a revealing conversation, maybe having a uncomfortable conversation, but that's something that's part of this larger story of relationship that's happening for you, not just in 2022, but over the next few years. Sagittarius. So this new moon is in your relationship sign. So this is about other people over the next 4 weeks. And a very classic way to experience this time, Sagittarius, is for new people to come into your life. If you're single, maybe it's a romantic partner. If you're in a relationship, it's a time for you to renew your connection with another person, or maybe even to recalibrate your connection with another person. Or maybe somebody else just really needs your attention at the moment. It's less about what you need, more about the needs of others. Do keep in mind, Sagittarius, that one of your major planets is Mercury. It's turning direct on June 3rd, but it's turning direct in a square to Saturn. So this is a week, especially even going into next week, where you've got to make some serious decisions. Saturn is down in your third sign, and so this has been 2 years of learning to really weigh your options and to really weigh your choices, and to be really responsible in how you use your voice and how you communicate to others. But that said, Sagittarius, you are in this sort of grand new cycle. Your planet Jupiter went into Aries back on May 13th. So it's about creativity, self-expression, romance. But it is a time, again, that's about relationships and other people, and needing to perhaps make a serious relationship with somebody, or a serious commitment to somebody, or even to recalibrate something that's not working. Capricorn. So Capricorn, Saturn is your planet, and it's turning retrograde. That's not a bad thing, Capricorn. It just means that for about 5 months out of the year, it's more about pulling in than pushing out. So where is your planet right now? Well, it's in Aquarius, and it's been in Aquarius since 2020. And over the past couple of years, it's really been about money, material stability, material worth, and resource. It's also been about value. And this has been a time for you to really master value. Saturn's a planet of mastery, and that's a planet that you're incarnating the energies of. And so Saturn is asking you, even though it is your planet, like, have you learned about the true value of something? Have you mastered value and worth? have you even mastered sort of this idea of creating more material stability and security for yourself? So really see how Saturn is showing up in your life right now, because sort of this is a 2-3 year time period where it is about really creating more material stability. For some people, that is property ownership and investment. For some other people, it's a need to sort of get finances in order. For other people, it's to know really the value and worth of what they have in their lives. And sometimes Saturn can be a little bit of a difficult planet through this space, but the idea is by the end of this time, you've really worked hard to shift and solidify your relationship with the material world. So this could be a very formative week, Capricorn. But Mercury is turning retrograde, and Mercury is in what's called your sixth sign. So Mercury is in your fifth sign, but the new moon is in your sixth sign. So this is a 4-week period, Capricorn, for you to sort of get your life in order, for you to look at the choices that you're making, for you to make different choices or more informed choices, for you to really be able to weigh your options. It may even be a very busy 4 weeks for you. But the bar is set higher for you, Capricorn. I mean higher than it normally is. So really, pay attention to how your day-to-day life is unfolding. Maybe you need to make some changes, make changes in your diet, make changes in your health. But that said, whatever you are changing or whatever projects you're starting, they have to really come from you. They have to be an expression of you and be an expression of your real, true self-expression, like your creativity and who you are is what lives within. But it's a big time for you, Capricorn, as Saturn turns retrograde, and really the bar is set higher for you this week. Aquarius, almost forgot. Aquarius. So Aquarius, as you know, you're a fixed sign, and the fixed signs are not so fixed at the moment. So let's sort of recap where you're at in the game, Aquarius. Over the past few years, you've been seeing a lot of big changes in your home environment. Whether it's your household, whether it's family, whether it's your living situation, people have moved in, people have moved out. Perhaps you have moved or made a big move, or maybe the move is internal, it's within. At the core of this time is for you to settle down, for you to know where home is, even if home, air quotes, is right where it was when you started. That said, Gemini season is a time for you to express your creativity, express who you are, to have fun, to have joy, to get curious. And so you may have sort of trips planned or trying to do more fun things right now. But the core of Gemini season for you is to really nourish the things that give your life joy and give your life vitality. And you may even need it, Aquarius, because you've just been through so much, possibly over the last couple of years. But then there's Saturn. Saturn is your planet, and it's turning retrograde in your sign, 25 degrees of Aquarius. So, of course, if you're a later born Aquarius, this would be my mid-February people. This is a time when it is about big life, capital L, life, and those moments that really forge us as humans. And over the past 2 years, Aquarius, Saturn has been in your sign. It's been the start of a 30-year cycle, 30 years, but also time where you've had to really take this next big step up in your life. Despite these really heavy energies and maybe even the ups and downs of May's eclipse season, really use Gemini season to sort of get back to what makes you, what really gives you joy, what gives you pleasure, because we all need to, let's say, fill our cup back up after we've been through a lot of change and transformation. And this is one of those times in your life, Aquarius, where a lot of change and transformation is happening. Pisces, last but not least, Pisces. So Pisces, you're what's called a mutable sign, and Gemini is also a mutable sign, and Gemini season for you is about home, family. It's about the roots and it's about the foundation and making sure you're getting your emotional needs met. So over the next 4 weeks after this new moon, maybe you're making a move. Maybe there's a change in your household. Maybe you need to make sure that your needs are getting met, that you feel safe and secure and rooted and grounded, that the foundation of life is really supporting you. With Mercury over in Taurus, there's this emphasis over the next 4 weeks that's about voice, communication, ideas, information. Maybe even the conversations that you're having with family members or loved ones, and maybe even the important conversations that you're having with family members and loved ones. Do keep in mind that Mercury is making a square to Saturn. So Mercury being a big player in your astrology, it's the ruler of home and family, it's the ruler of relationships. And maybe this is a week by extension where you have to make some serious decisions about relationships. This is all relationships, not just our romantic relationships. And if you're not in a relationship, maybe this is a week where you have to get very serious or clear about what you need and what you need in a relationship, and maybe make very different choices accordingly. That said, Pisces, just your reminder, I told you this a couple weeks ago, but Jupiter is your planet, and as of May 13th, it's in Aries. So you're in this brand new cycle. Jupiter made this conjunction to Mars. It's sort of this time where you're really looking to move, to set sail, to take action, to really create more stability in your life. But maybe it's that you got to wait for Mercury to turn direct later this week on June 3rd for you to really have the clarity and focus that you need at this time. But Gemini season, just as a reminder, you're sort of at the bottom of your chart. It's all about preparing yourself for the next, 7, 8, 9, 10 months as the sun moves through the lower part of your chart, and then through Virgo season comes to the top of your chart, and even into Sagittarius season, which is when the sun reaches the highest of your chart. So really lay the foundation this week, make some serious decisions, be real, above all, be real, Pisces. And from there, maybe you can, kind of go off in a new direction this week. So that's your look at the astrology of May 30th through June 5th of 2022. We just had a Gemini new moon. You can read more about it on empoweringastrology.com. I wrote a new moon report, but also to your friendly reminder that I am on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube and Spotify. Please follow me there. Sign up for my newsletter. I actually put out a newsletter first thing every Monday morning, so you can kind of get the scoop for the coming week. Book a consultation with me. I know many of you are my clients, and I do appreciate you all, and I appreciate those that really support my work and come here every week and participate. And again, I really appreciate that. So we will check in with each other next week. I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about. Enjoy the start of your June. Do the Saturn work this week. Just do what Saturn wants, and life's a lot easier. So again, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I will see you all next week.